Thank you all for coming today. Don't leave just yet. It's the closing remarks by Professor Soumitra Dutta, the Dean of Saïd Business School at Oxford University. It's very fitting that we have invited Professor Soumitra Dutta to deliver those remarks. The index was actually developed 6 years ago with the help of Dr. Paul Temporal from Saïd Business School. So it's fantastic to have Professor Dutta with us today.
Well, giving the closing remarks, especially after having a full plate of 2 days of great speakers, is so much harder than giving the opening remarks. David said earlier, and David, congratulations on having organized a wonderful event, that I'll be giving concluding remarks. I would not even try. So, no attempt from my side to give concluding remarks in the sense of trying to get the thoughts together. You've heard from many great speakers. Let me give you some brief observations about how I feel about this whole theme of soft power today. Of course, the importance of soft power is something that we all accept. It's critical in multiple ways. But today there's a jarring reality of living with what we are seeing happen in the world today on a daily basis, especially in announcements coming out from America, vis-a-vis Europe, vis-a-vis some other parts of the world. There is a sense of nostalgia that I feel that people are just yearning for, that this is just a bad dream, a temporary blip. And somehow, let's just bear, somehow go through these next 3-4 years, and things will get back to normal, the old normal. Unfortunately, I'm not in that camp. And this regardless of who are the next president of the US or in Europe, the various leaders eventually elected. My view is that this is the new reality, the new normal. And why do I believe that? It's because I think what we are witnessing right now is the result of some structural challenges that we all face. There's a massive disruption happening on multiple fronts. Technology, of course, is one of them. The rise of China is another one of them. And it is true that many countries are having a hard time coping up with them. Even one of the most powerful economies in the world, the US, is having a hard time dealing with the rise of China as an economic power. That's the reality. The shift of manufacturing jobs, the loss of productivity and livelihoods for many Americans. These kinds of developments are not unique to America, unique to many countries in Europe too, and I do not see these challenges decreasing. These challenges, these pressures on livelihoods, these pressures on societies are going to accentuate and accelerate, especially given what is happening with the rise of AI. AI is really at the very initial phases of this third wave of AI, and most people see an exponential curve out here, really at the tipping point of this hockey stick curve. If you study exponential trends, you know that the change that will happen most likely in the next 5 years will probably be equal to the change that happened in the last 20 years. The change that might happen in the next 10 years might be equal to the change that happened in the last 30 years. I'm just giving numbers out here. But the big question mark out here is that are our organizations, both governmental and business, prepared for this rate of change? Because we humans and our organizations, in general, we live in a linear world. So if you just plot a linear curve with an exponential curve, you see that for a long time, the gap between a linear curve and exponential curve is not really huge. But at some moment when it kicks off, the gap keeps on increasing. And that's where I think you face, or we all face, a second challenge. It's nice to talk about soft power, but the reality, the harsh truth is, which one comes first? Hard power comes first. That's the reality. Professor Clark talked about having systems that people want to imitate, people actually want to learn from. And the reality is that you want to learn from countries, learn from companies that are performing well by some metrics. Today, for example, Singapore is more of an attractive country to learn from than Russia, even though Russia might be a much more stronger military power than Singapore. It is no surprise that the top 3 countries are US, China, and the UK in their index. Why not some other country in Europe? I know that France, Germany also do well, but why is UK ahead of the rest? I do believe it's partly because, of course, the UK has been a superpower for many decades and centuries before the US. So it has strong institutions, but also I believe it's because it's got the strongest military in Europe. I do think the hard power of British military, British industry is part of the equation. I'm not saying it's the only thing, but it's part of the equation. So my message really is that if we actually look at building soft power, we cannot live in a cozy world of saying, let someone else do the hard part and we'll do the soft part. Costa Rica was mentioned earlier. I just was in Costa Rica 2 weeks ago. Beautiful country, lots of wonderful eco-resorts. 71 in the index. Are people lining up to copy Costa Rica? Maybe, in some ecological domains, hospitality perhaps. As a general society, I don't think so. Even Intel set up operations in Costa Rica and pulled out, simply because they didn't have that intellectual base inside the country. So the question that is ahead of all of us is, how do we build that economic hard power in our societies? If Europe wants to do well and be respected in the world, that economic hard power is very critical. Look at the growth rates that America has benefited from as compared to Europe. It's diverged. Look at the income per capita in US and in Europe. Is diverged. Europe is, of course, beautiful. Lovely quality of life, great place to live, very equal societies, great childcare, lots of great things. And I benefit from a lot of them, too. I want them for my family. But the reality is that Europe's economic performance is lower than the US. And that's one reason, an important reason in my humble view, why the soft power of Europe is lower than that of America. It doesn't need to be. We have the capabilities, but the soft power is lower. Look at, for example, technology. And I don't want to be down out here. The big technology companies in the world are either American or Chinese. I'm talking about the digital technology companies. Really? What's the biggest digital tech company coming out of Europe? It is Spotify. Okay, the market cap of about 150 billion. It's a great company, but not the company that's shaping the future of the tech frontier. If you look at the amount of R&D investments happening in the world, and I do work in innovation management, 2 countries are right out there. If you have these bar charts, US and China are huge bar charts. The rest of the countries are small little figures. UK is the smallest, the biggest of the smaller figures. So what you see is that the amount of investment in R&D, the amount of investment in building a strong economy is absolutely critical. And for that, what I really believe is that Europe, we have great people. The discovery science happening in Europe is exceptional. So in my own work on innovation, we look at innovation clusters in the world based on some hard metrics, not subjective opinions, hard metrics like patents and publications and 2 or 3 other hard metrics, done by WIPO. WIPO is the UN agency on patenting. You'll be surprised to and pleased to actually learn that the number 1 cluster in the world is Cambridge, UK. Number 2 cluster in the world is San Jose, California. And number 3 cluster in the world is Oxford, UK. Okay? San Jose patents a little bit less because software companies patent less in general. So probably San Jose is right there, the number 1, number 2. But 2 of the top 3 innovation clusters in the world are in the UK. UK has had tremendous successes in a variety of domains. The same can be argued for many other countries in Europe. But Europe really has not succeeded in creating a unified market. As a result, all the great discovery science coming out of Europe cannot scale in Europe. If you have a company sitting in UK, it is so hard for them to sell the products in France or in Poland. The language, the culture, the rules, it's a fragmented market. And because companies cannot scale, they have only one option, to basically sell to the big American players who have the resources to scale across the markets. So as a result, what is happening in Europe is that the money, the capital flow for growth capital is not flowing into Europe. Because money goes and follows companies who can in fact scale up. And because people know that scaling up is so hard in Europe structurally, money doesn't flow out here. So there's a number of different things you can sort of talk about, but fundamentally we have policy issues, structural issues that is holding back European economic performance. And that is the big issue to be solved. Huge issue. Especially in the UK after Brexit. And imagine after Brexit, I wasn't here when the Brexit discussion took place. I observed from outside the UK, and there was such an active discussion about Brexit. Good reasons, bad reasons, all kind of discussions. Brexit was done, and then there's a vacuum about what to do after Brexit. No one has a clear policy about how to innovate post-Brexit, how to invest post-Brexit. And this is an issue because the world is moving fast. Think about AI, for example. The US is pushing very hard, as we all read, in the press in multiple ways. And China is pressing equally hard, as we hear today with DeepSeek, but guess what? There's a lot of other things happening in China too. And Europe, we are wondering what to do. Okay? Of course, there are governmental efforts, Mistral in France, similar efforts in Germany starting up. But the reality is that there is a lack of collaboration across European governments in AI and technology. Why? Because national security sensitivities, other kinds of protectionism. And we haven't done in Europe what we did with, for example, Airbus. Airbus is an aviation technology, key technology, where US had the lead, European countries came together, formed another major competitor, and today Airbus is a big global competitor. So the whole issue out here really is that in Europe, while we have made great progress, and I lived in France for a long time, 20 years, I love the quality of life, I love many different things. We have to think very seriously about how do we invest in the core economic performance, because the core economic performance drives the future of our societies, drives in effect the soft power that we seek to have as a result of the hard power that we create. Now, let me also do my bit and end on a positive note. So in face of all these realities, where do I see optimism? And for me, the most optimistic note really is every single time I meet with young students at Oxford University or elsewhere. When I meet with young people today, I'm amazed at how bright they are, how more intelligent they are as compared to what I was at their age. Of course, the circumstances have changed. The internet is here. They live much more global lives. But fundamentally, they are so exceptional. I'm sure you feel the same way about your own children or other family members who are young in your families. And I think we have to do our bit to make sure that we help them unleash their creative potential. That's our job, is to basically make life simple for them. Whether they want to study, whether they want to actually start companies, or do other kinds of economic or other social professions. So I think the takeaway message for me personally, I think, is there's no point yearning for the past. The past is not coming back. We have to get past the denial phase. The future is actually very bright because so many opportunities are opening up. And the challenge for us is to somehow have the capabilities and the courage and the energy to be able to take advantage of that. And we have the best asset for that, our young people. So let's bet on our young people. So thank you so much for listening, and I hope you have a good rest of the conference.
So, here we are. We've gone past 5 o'clock, which was meant to be the deadline. You're all still sitting there, so I'm very pleased. Thank you very much for staying. I am not going to say a lot, because I'm sure you'll want to go and either get home or go and have a drink. It's been great. I've enjoyed today and yesterday. We've had a very interesting, varied group of speakers talking about the issues around soft power. I hope you found it as interesting as I have. I think today was particularly good. And I hope that you will all read the report, look at our website. If you want advice, ask us, and come back next year or to another one of our events. We think that the ball is rolling with soft power. The creation of the Soft Power Council in the UK, the growing interest in soft power we're very pleased with, and we hope that maybe this growth in the interest in soft power and the development of soft power might mitigate some of those nightmare scenarios that Michael and others talked about. Maybe we won't have the end of the world because soft power will stop that happening. So with that, I will allow you to leave. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Well, actually, I suppose I ought to say thank you for all coming. Thank you for the QE2 for all the work they've done, because they've run it very smoothly. Thank you, Zoe and Georgia, for running the team. Thanks for everyone at Brand Finance who's been running around looking after people. But it's been a great pleasure hosting you all, and I hope to see you again in the future. Thank you.